The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. You know the social medias. I kind of can't talk about it right now because we are currently live at Oktoberfest at the American German Club of the Palm Beaches in Lake Worth, Florida. I know you heard the last episode with our friend Jay Vollstedt, the membership chair, and all sorts of other fun stuff. Oh, the lights just came on. Hopefully you've been watching us on Instagram Live last week when we were here filming. Hi, everybody. You'll be hearing the audio. If you're watching that, you'll be hearing the audio here in a little bit. If you haven't, obviously, come check us out on Instagram at Florida Beer Blog, on Facebook at FL Beer Blog, on Twitter at Florida Beer Blog. And I wish that if you have not followed us on social media, make sure to do that right now because where we are standing is absolutely fantastic. I wish I could describe this to you. It is every bit the German Black Forest hunting lodge that you can think of. Our friend and tour guide, Jay Vollstedt, is currently turning on all of the lights for us. It's kind of fantastic, and it's a lot of fun. If you have not been to Oktoberfest at the American German Club of the Palm Beaches, by the time this episode is released, there will be another weekend. I definitely recommend that you come on out. If you've already been, there's going to be another episode. So let's listen to Jay Vollstedt talk about a little bit about where we are standing because this is absolutely gorgeous.
Well, thank you. This building was built by many of the founding members. It was built in 1975. So it's been around for a while. In addition to this main dance hall, we have an outside beer garden. It's now inside. It started out as an outside beer garden. We passed through. That's actually open this year. Next year, we plan on having this whole thing open again. It's always open, but this year we couldn't justify it. But we do have, again, we have the dance floor. We have the main bar behind you. And
that's absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
I would assume that those are beers are brought over direct from Germany?
Absolutely. We have, as you can probably tell, maybe not from this distance, we can get closer. We have a Weinsteffenfest beer. We have a Paulaner Pils, Bitburger Pils. We have one from Eyinger, which is just outside of Munich. That's also a Pils.
Interesting.
And we have a Salvator from Paulaner, which is a Doppelbock. So it's about 8% alcohol. It's wonderful. We have the Wiesen beer. We have the Märzen beer, which are the two Oktoberfest beers. Mm-hmm. And, of course, a Dunkel and a Helles, a light beer and a dark.
Nice. So talk to me a little bit about the architecture because this seems very traditional, almost stereotypical. If you kind of envision a sort of backwoods, Black Forest, hunting lodge, very Beauty and the Beast almost.
Correct.
This is what it would look like. How was that intentional? How much involvement did they try to make it sort of look historic and authentic as possible?
Sure. Yeah. So again, I don't know if we talked about this, but this club actually started out as the Bavarian American Club. And so all the members were Bavarian, and they suddenly realized, well, we have a lot of people here in South Florida that are from Germany, not necessarily from Bavaria. And so they changed it to the American German Club because they said, well, we're Americans first now. And so we'll call it the American German Club. But those first few groups of people were from Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, again, like the Black Forest. And so it's very much the half-timbered style that they decided to go with when they built it.
I'm just going to go ahead and be the silly American, for example. I just assumed Bavaria equals Germany, Germany equals Bavaria. The two are sort of interchangeable, but it sounds like there's a little bit of a nuance there.
Oh, it's not even a nuance. It's a big difference. Nobody in the north of Germany outside of Bavaria, maybe Baden-Württemberg, wears Tracht or your typical lederhosen. I shouldn't say Tracht. Tracht is customary clothing. The northern Germans have their own version of Tracht. For instance, up in the Schleswig-Holstein region near like the Netherlands and Denmark, their Tracht looks more like the Dutch boy with the knickers and
Gotcha.
and a yellow slicker because they were seamen. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And obviously, as we take a look, we're in the center of the dance floor right now.
Correct.
And around us, we have an array of flags and an array of crests. Let's start with the flags first. Like, what are these flags?
Yep.
If you could tell us a little bit.
Sure. These are the flags of the states of Germany. And so very shortly, we'll have our parade of flags where we'll be taking these down. You'll notice that there's a flag holder dangling from each one.
Yeah, each one of them has sort of a leather strap on them.
Right. So we'll be taking those down, and we'll have a parade of flags here shortly, I believe at about 4:30. So we'll be doing that. Again, so these are the states of Germany. We also have crests from various states as well, which is kind of interesting because some of them seem to be misspelled, or maybe they're the Schwäbisch spelling or the Bayerisch spelling. But yeah, so we have mostly states, although I do see at Nuremberg, I just noticed that's a city.
I was going to say, because you've got Nuremberg over here, you've got Frankfurt, you've got Berlin. Are those kind of like, you take a look at Miami or New York, it's both a city and also a county. Is that sort of the similar?
No, not those, actually. Bremen is a city-state. Berlin is a city-state. Frankfurt is not. That's part of Hessen. But yeah, so there are a few city-states in Germany, but yeah, Frankfurt is not one of them. So Nuremberg is not.
Gotcha. When it comes to the beer, because obviously it all comes back to the beer when we're talking about German culture, how much, or I guess how difficult is it to get beers that are authentic to the region versus what we can get here in the United States? And I use one of your members, their brother has a brewery that is in Germany. I would assume that it's almost impossible to get the beers over here due to all the different laws that have to kind of happen.
Correct. It's very difficult to get to the smaller brewers here. Some of the mid-range ones now are starting to make their way to the U.S. One of my favorites comes from a monastery, Kloster Ondex, in the 90s. You couldn't find it outside of Ondex, maybe a couple of places in Munich. And then as things got progressed, you could easily find it in Munich. And now you can find it at Total Wine. So that's great. But you're right. It's very difficult. And you're right. There are laws. They have the Purity Act, the Reinheitsgebot, and they're saying you can only have water, hops, malt, and yeast. And they didn't say anything about preservatives. And so that becomes a problem. So you have preservatives, minimal preservatives in the beers that come over here. So they taste great, but there's nothing like having one straight from a keg in a Munich beer garden.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to ask about the Reinheitsgebot because that's always a question of mine, because you take a look at the beers here in Florida and they are so far away from Reinheitsgebot compliant that it's almost impossible to find one that is. Do you start to see, since you have been over to Germany, since you have been to so many of the breweries there, are they kind of sticking with what they have, or are they starting to become a little bit more like Americans where let's just drag as many dessert toppings as we possibly can through the forest and into the beers?
No, I'm not saying that they have craft beers, and some of the craft beers have flavors to them, but for the most part, those are not Reinheitsgebot compliant. What you will see is very similar to IPAs. They have a style called Bergbach Hell, and the Bergbach Hell is much hoppier than your standard Bavarian brew, which is a little more on the malty side, less on the hoppy side. Pilsners are becoming more popular. Paulaner introduced their first Pilsner here about a year and a half ago to take over for Furstenberg, which is another company they own. So you don't see a lot of variants. The Reinheitsgebot, they use hops, they use malt, they use toasting of the malts and stuff to vary what it is that they can provide in terms of different styles.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Lake Worth for a little while, because you're at the end of the first weekend.
Yes.
And I know Friday and Saturday were kind of crazy for you, weren't they?
Yeah. We had, I would say our Saturday night was as close to our open Saturday nights that we used to have, and hopefully we'll have next year again. So it was very close. We had, I think we had over 4,000 people, and it was a great time. Oh my gosh. Again, that's when you realize it's very similar to a tent in Oktoberfest. Not all of Oktoberfest, but maybe a single tent. And the crowd was crazy. They were under the pavilion singing songs, dancing to the tunes the bands were playing. So it was great.
Awesome. And in terms of the food, which we have not dug into, but I definitely want to, because I am a couple beers in and I am hungry. From both you and I guess the other members, what have they sampled so far? And what have been the hot hits of Oktoberfest?
Eating? What's that? I'm here. I'm here all day, every day, 2 hours before, probably 2 hours after. I'm lucky if I can maybe snag some chicken fingers and French fries. However,
which is not exactly traditional, I would assume.
No, but it's finger food and it's easy to eat and it's quick and I can leave it there. But we do have Leberkäse, we have bratwurst, we have goulash, we have half chickens, which is very traditional for the actual Oktoberfest.
Really?
Yes. When you get reservations, your reservation's a small fee, like €2 or €3, but you're also paying for 2 Mass, 2 liters of beer, and a half chicken.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so you're always getting that.
I guess whenever you think of German food, it's traditionally what's in a tube.
Yeah,
I
right.
guess. So I didn't realize that half chickens were a thing.
Half chickens. We have schnitzel as well, but we Schweinebraten, Sauerbraten. We don't have that because it's a little more difficult to prepare here. Next year, if we're doing this inside, sometimes they have that as a more proper meal, I guess, because we have a really nice inside kitchen. You know, it's industrial strength. So
awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And with the dancing, because I know that here in a little bit, you're going to be leaving with your wife, who we're going to be talking to here in a few minutes.
Right.
And we're going to be doing some dancing. What are we going to see? What is that going? How traditional? What exactly is that?
Okay. Our dance group is very traditional, but everybody has to understand there's folk dancing, which is what we are. We're a Volkstanzgruppe. And then there's Schuhplattler, and that's where you see the guys slapping the shoes and slapping the leather and the girls twirling around forever, making them dizzy as far as I'm concerned. We don't do that. We do have some folks that are getting up there in years, and then you have other folks like me. I'm getting up there in years, but I don't have any rhythm. And so our coordination. So we don't do Schuhplattler. We do folk dancing. And so those are typically waltzes, polkas in the German style and tradition with the music as well.
Awesome. And obviously we have to talk about the containers. And I will say, after our conversation for the last episode of the podcast, I made sure to bring my glass. You've got your
Steinkrug.
Okay.
So Stein is stone.
Okay, so
Stein is stone. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yes. And so and Krug is just your mug. But yes, these are the breweries of Munich. There's more than there used to be. There's more here than there are now because they have Hackerbräu and Pschorrbräu. Well, Hacker Pschorr is now a single company. Thomas Bräu in the middle and Paulaner are one company, so they're called Paulaner. So you don't have Thomas Bräu anymore. But
Gotcha.
Yeah, I liked it. I found it in our gift shop because I forgot my Steinkrug, and this keeps things very cold while you're trying to pour beer and you only have a chance to drink a sip or two. Still cold when I come back to it. So that's why I wanted one.
I will say that's amazing that you allow people to bring their own steins.
Yep. Well, again, if they come from Germany, they're very regulated, and you can easily tell on this stein. There's a mark somewhere. I can't see it right now, and it's got the line where it's half liter. And the steins are the same, or the Mosses, the 1 liter ones, are the same way. And that way nobody gets cheated of beer. And so that's Rostel is one of the big ones. And again, every single one of these that come from Germany have the mark. It's a 0.3 liter, 0.5, 1 liter. It'll have the mark.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's go talk about clothing. Let's go meet your wife. And thank you so much so far to this. Absolutely. You were totally right. This is absolutely fantastic. And if you hadn't told me that this was in Lake Worth, I wouldn't have believed you.
You do kind of slip into Bavaria once you jump in here. So absolutely. All right.
So I completely forgot to record audio introducing our next interview while at Oktoberfest, because not going to lie, after a little while, you just sort of get swept up into the craziness of everything. But it was a fantastic event. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But if you're going to Oktoberfest, clearly you can wear t-shirt and shorts, and that's exactly what I did. But you can also get fully kitted out if you want to, in your classic German wear. If you didn't bring any, you can buy some, because they do have an authentic store at the event that the American German Club of the Palm Beaches keeps fully stocked. And the person who's in charge of that is Christina Vollstedt, who's actually Jay's wife. If you took a look at the artwork that we have on our Instagram account advertising this episode, I do have a picture of the two of them in their folk dances. And what's kind of interesting is that we recorded our interview with Jay in the clubhouse. He and Christina went to go do that dance, and then Christina sat and showed us all about German traditional garb for both the men and the women. Obviously, I think the men's get a little bit more notoriety. And I finally actually got to learn what a pair of lederhosen really is. So if you've got a dirndl or lederhosen and you're not wearing it yet, go ahead and put it on if you want to, grab another stein of beer, and enjoy this full rundown of your traditional Oktoberfest garb. So, first and foremost, how do you stay cool in Florida wearing this?
You fake it.
You fake it.
You fake it. Yeah.
All right. So talk to me about the what I am seeing both here in the store and out and about, because I think people understand, this is what traditional German wear looks like. But what exactly is it?
Okay. So the women wear dirndls, which
Okay.
is the dress with the apron, and then it has the underblouse. They're fairly simple, but you can also get them all blinged out with lots of jewelry and lots of sparklies. Most of us wear more simple.
Okay.
They're comfortable, but the idea is that they fit as well as they can and let you breathe.
Gotcha. So this isn't like a hard corset. This isn't like a
No.
suck it
You
in
don't have to
and-
stick your knee in your back and tighten it. No. They're very comfortable. They're fitted, which most of us have gotten away from, but they're much more flattering, and all body types look good in them, so it works.
Nice.
And then the men wear
yes.
lederhosen.
We got a lot to talk about
Yes.
with the men, because
Yeah.
I'm looking at your husband.
Yes.
There's a lot going on here.
Well, he doesn't even have it all.
Oh, really?
So he's got his lederhosen. His have the Traeger, which is
Okay.
the suspenders.
So which is the lederhosen? Is
the
it
lederhosen are the pants.
Okay.
The leather shorts.
Gotcha. I always thought the lederhosen were the socks.
No, his socks are called loaferl, the ones that are the two pieces.
Okay.
And the idea behind the two pieces is you tend to wear out the bottom quicker than the top. So you keep the calf warmers and you just replace the bottom ones.
Gotcha.
But then his pants are the lederhosen because they're leather. Leder is leather.
Okay. And they've always been shorts. I never see lederhosen pants. Why is that?
I'm not exactly sure. I do know that in further south, they tend to wear what are called bundhosen. They go below the knee.
Okay.
And then their socks all come up. I don't know if it's just simply because of trying to get a big enough piece of leather to make them. Because some of the guys need really big pieces of leather.
And I was going to say, since they are leather, I would assume that they'd be pretty warm.
They're warm, but it's amazing. I actually have a pair of lederhosen too. Once you're in them and wearing them, they're not any worse than any other shorts.
Gotcha.
So-
And do they usually, are there a lot of lederhosen for women, or is it very strict? Basically, if you're a woman, you're only going for
I
the
think
dirndl.
there's more lederhosen for women than there used to be. We actually have some we call denim hosen because they're made out of jeans.
Oh, cool. Oh, there they are,
Yeah.
right there.
So for Florida, that's a little bit better than the denim. And then there are also the women's shorts tend to be shorter. They're above the knee, but then there's some really short ones.
Gotcha. And then,
So-
of course, we're going to keep going up.
Right.
And he does have suspenders because he sort of look like the traditional.
That's more
suspenders
traditional.
farmer.
Right, because you got to hold them up. However, in Munich at the moment, it's more fashionable to have a belt instead of the suspenders.
Really?
Yeah.
So I was going to say, does it make it lederhosen if it doesn't have the suspenders?
Yeah,
or
they're
is it-
still leather pants.
Okay, gotcha.
Lederhosen just means leather pants.
Gotcha. So
So-
it's not that particular style and cut
Yeah.
whatever. It's literally
Leather pants. That's what it means. Because
Well-
hosen is pants and leder is leather. So
Gotcha. Of course, we're not talking about the stereotypical 80s rocker shiny black leather pants.
no. These are more
very-
like a suede look.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And is this a traditional look, for farmers, for people that are out in the boonies, that are out farming and whatnot? This is generally what they would wear for a utilitarian purpose?
Yes, actually they do. A lot of them these days, they would wear a t-shirt instead of the check shirts. So they'll wear the check shirts for festivals and stuff. But that's what you'll see. When you're riding by on the train, you'll see them out there working. That's what they're in.
And so obviously, as I'm taking a look around, there are a lot of the check shirts, but it's a very tight, close gingham almost.
Yeah, it's not the real
quite
big
as
one.
big.
It's more, it's called the gingham. So it's a
Yeah.
smaller check. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then we're going to keep going all the way up.
Got to have a sport hoot, a hat.
Oh, a
Sport hoot.
sport hoot.
Yes, that's the hat.
Interesting.
Yeah. Hoot is hat.
Yeah,
So-
I guess I would traditionally assume sort of Peter Pan, because I know if you look at some of the old Disneyland stuff, Walt
More of
Disney
a
was wearing
fedora shape.
Exactly,
Right.
but it's a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
And with yours, you've got the hats, but also the feathers are separate. So let's
Yes.
talk about the hats first.
Okay.
Is this sort of something that you're going to see outside of Oktoberfest? Is this something that you're going to see in the
Yeah,
German
it's more of a
countryside?
just an everyday hat.
Okay.
And then the ones that are wider brimmed are more of a utilitarian. You got to have a hat if you're out working in the fields. So if
Absolutely.
you have the wider brim. But then the fedora shaped ones are just, it's a more dressy hat.
Okay.
So
And then, of course, there's the feather. And you've got a
Yes.
couple of feathers. You've got some that are pretty colored. Does the style of feather mean something when it comes to pairing it with the hat, or is it really just an aesthetic thing?
it's
You want
preference.
something-
A lot of times they're not feathers. They have different pins that will mean things. There's some that have a gamspard that it was supposed to be the gamspard was the goat's chin.
Okay.
You know, the hair on his chin.
Gotcha.
And so traditionally it was from hunting, and they would take the hair from whatever animal they had killed to make the feather. So the bigger one meant you had killed a bigger animal.
Gotcha.
So now they're more just for fashion.
Awesome. And obviously, gentleman just came in. He's got a ton of pins
Pins.
on his hat. What are the meaning behind the pins? Because I know as we're taking a look, we've got a couple of
Yeah, for
American
special
German
events,
Club.
they'll
Yeah.
have different pins. I know with my husband's hat, wherever we go, every little town or wherever, when we travel in Germany, he gets a pin. So they commemorate, kind of like getting charm bracelets for women.
Absolutely.
So the pins commemorate whatever is special to him.
Now, I know with the Olympics, pin trading is a very big thing.
Same idea.
Okay, so there's a lot of pin trading. Will they,
Yeah.
like, is it possible, like, because I know that your husband just came back from Germany. I don't know if you went on the trip or not.
Yes, we did.
You did. Did you bring a bunch of American German Club of the Palm Beaches pins so that you could trade?
No,
when
we
you
didn't
went?
on this trip, but we went up to, Iowa. My husband's from Iowa. And so we went up there, and they were having he grew up in a town that's all German.
Uh-huh.
And so they do shoots and fests and all the German festivals. So we had taken some to trade with them up there.
Awesome.
We don't happen to do it when we go over to Germany because we're traveling. We're not actually meeting with different groups. So
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And so since you're the one who runs the store and since you've kind of, you're the person that kind of stocks
Does the
all of
shopping,
this.
yeah.
Exactly. Where do you do the shopping? Where do you try to find
I
the
shop
stuff?
from Germany.
Okay. So,
I have some vendors that are in Germany, and so I make my orders and they come from them. So
this isn't wish.com. This isn't
Nope.
coming over from Hong Kong
yeah,
or
no.
anything.
Well, it depends where they get them, of course. But the stores that I order from are in Germany.
Awesome.
So-
And I guess how difficult is it to keep stuff in stock? Because like I know you were just talking to your husband, you are out of lederhosen.
Yes.
And you still have another weekend of Oktoberfest
Yeah.
to go.
It's difficult.
so-
You learn as you go.
Uh-huh.
But this year, I'm out of the lederhosen because they sold. Some years they don't sell as fast as others, but this year they did.
I was going to say, which tends to go faster, the lederhosen for the men or the dirndls for the women?
Dirndls.
Dirndls, really?
Yeah, they do. I think the women can figure out where to wear their dirndls a little more often, and so the men are a little more hesitant to come in unless they've seen all the rest of our guys wearing
Gotcha.
them. So
And I know that your husband was saying that when you go to the real Oktoberfest, you have to wear
Everybody.
something.
yes,
It's like everybody's wearing something.
Yeah.
Can you kind of tell who your repeat offenders are here at the Oktoberfest at American German Club at the Palm Beaches based on their clothing? It's like, yeah, you know what you're doing.
Yes.
You're brand new.
Well,
I
and you
clearly
can
am
tell because
brand
some
new.
people, and some people come in and they come in the costumes instead of the actual lederhosen, and you're like, yeah.
So they went to Party City and okay.
Well, they're usually short or made out of weird fabrics, or you can tell.
So you can tell. Interesting.
You can tell.
Interesting.
It's not real hard.
So if you wanted to invest in a good dirndl or a good pair of lederhosen, let's start with a dirndl. For a fully outfitted dirndl, kind of like you have, because you've got it's
Yes.
absolutely gorgeous cut, gorgeous fabric, beautiful, beautiful tribe. It's actually a really, really pretty dress. What are you kind of looking at in terms of a good investment, and is it an investment that's going to stick around for a long time?
It is because most of them you can adjust the sizes a little bit. So if you know somebody who sews, you can let them out as we all grow.
Gotcha.
But generally, dirndl dresses are about $150, and the blouses are anywhere from $35 to $50. And then it depends if you're going to add jewelry, because like the little chains in the front are called charivari.
Okay.
Those are about $45. And then whatever jewelry you add to it after
Gotcha.
that. And then the men's pants, we had lederhosen. The men's were about $160.
And I would assume that a lot of that would be the fact that these are real leather pants, right?
Yes. Well, and it depends what kind of leather, because if they're just cowhide, I know we all assume leather is leather, which would be cowhide.
Yes.
Those are a little rougher. but you can get deerskin pants. You can get goat.
Really?
And so some of those are a little softer than just the straight lederhosen.
I had no idea.
So,
and I guess personal preference for you and your husband, what kind of hide do you prefer with your
deer?
lederhosen?
They're a lot
really?
softer. And then those tend to be more expensive. Those can be upwards of $1,000.
Really?
So if you want to get those on a deal.
But in terms of endurance, in terms of breathability, in terms
they
of
last.
lasting,
As long as you don't gain a lot of weight,
gotcha.
your pants will last.
That's amazing.
So yeah, they're an investment once you get them.
So if somebody were to come to Oktoberfest of the Palm Beaches, they wanted to come, you just kind of at least get a taste.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you recommend that they start?
They need to come in the Dirndl booth.
Oh, so just
Come in here and we'll get you started. Yeah.
That's kind of amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much. I am definitely very sad that you're later house.
We're out.
But I think my wife has just gotten her hat and her feathers, so I need to make sure
check out what you're going to have to buy before you get out of here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
So for my family and I, this was our first time going to Oktoberfest. This will not be the last time going to Oktoberfest because it is an absolute blast. The beers are fantastic. The food is fantastic. I was happy to finally try a currywurst, and I cannot tell you that it did not disappoint at all. And I'm not going to lie, the prices are actually pretty reasonable. If you bring your own stein, which is what I did at Jay's recommendation, a full liter stein fill was only about $16. And if you go to some places around town, unfortunately, you're going to be paying almost that for a standard 22-ounce pint glass. But to have it filled with authentic German Oktoberfest beers, and yes, they did have the Märzen and the Fest beer. When you talk to them, they will probably say the Fest beer, otherwise known as the Wiesen, is a light Oktoberfest, and the Märzen is more of the dark Oktoberfest. And yes, I was able to get one of each, and they did not disappoint. Absolutely fantastic event. I will say, if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, go ahead and get them now. I know Friday and Saturday sold out. They were a little surprised on how crazy busy they got. As you heard in the interview, it does look like they are out of lederhosen, unfortunately. If you have little ones, they do have little dirndls for the girls. And I actually got one for my daughter, and our friend got one for her daughter, so they kind of match, which was really, really cute. Especially on Sundays, it is a very family-friendly event. They do have a full carnival in the back with a lot of rides. There are plenty of kid-friendly food and drink options. There's a lot of dancing. Much chicken dancing was done, not gonna lie. And it was an absolutely fantastic event. They do have a number of other events that happen throughout the year. They also have Christkindlmarkt, which is their annual Christmas event. Before that is Krampusnacht, which, if you know anything about Krampus, it's not necessarily for the kiddos, is what we were told many times by many people. But there's a lot of great stuff that's going on at the American German Club at the Palm Beaches. Definitely want to thank Jay and Christina and the rest of the club for their hospitality and allowing us to cover the event. Next week, we are going to be heading over to Tampa and about 100 years back in time. And we're going to talk about the beginnings of Florida's craft beer industry, which goes a long way back with some interesting people, some of who built facilities and institutions that are still with us today. That story is going to take some twists and turns, and not only is that history celebrated a lot more now than they ever had been, but the beer that was originally brewed there is starting to come back by way of Havana, Cuba, Amsterdam, and of course, Miami. But you'll have to wait for next week to hear all of that. In the meantime, make sure to follow us on social media at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram and Twitter, FL Beer Blog on Facebook. Florida Beer Podcast is a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network. Make sure to check all of our shows out at floridapodcastnetwork.com. The direct link to us is obviously floridabeerpodcast.com, and of course our sister site where all the magic happens, floridabeerblog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week with another great episode celebrating Florida's craft beer community. And if you're in Germany, obviously I'll give you a pass on this. But if you're anywhere in the Sunshine State, make sure you drink Florida Craft.